Pantoufleee! Hello everyone, Pantoufleee here today for a new video, and today we are going to talk about the tanks that are upsetting you when you're facing them, but the tanks you love when you're playing them. I'm talking of course about the broken tanks. I asked myself, what is a broken tank? What is there some kind of typology of the broken tank? And my conclusion is, in this game we have three main different categories of characteristics. We have the armor, we have the mobility, and we have the gun. And not a single tank in this game doesn't appear in one of these three categories. When you take a tank, it's either a great gun, either a great mobility, or either a great armor. But you never have a tank that has a shitty armor, a shitty gun, and a shitty mobility. Or it's quite rare. It exists, don't mind me, but it's really rare. And for the broken tanks, it's the opposite. A broken tank most of the time will be a great tank in each of these characteristics. For example, if we take a look at the Foch, you have a great gun because the DPM is amazing, the penetration, also the alpha damage. You also have a great mobility because the tank goes up to 50 to 60 kilometers per hour. And you also have a great armor because even if you have some weak spots on the top of the tank, most of the time when people shoot at your weak spot, they are gonna bounce. So these are the main thing. That's why we can call, for example, the Foch 155 broken, because the tank doesn't seem to have only downside, despite the fact that maybe it doesn't have a turret. But still, this is how I class personally the broken tanks in Blitz. Every time I'm asking myself, is this tank broken? I'm gonna answer it by telling me, okay, if this tank, has mobility, armor, and a gun, yes, it's definitely broken. We take, for example, the Foch, but we can talk about other tanks as well. We can talk about the Object 252U, we can talk about the WZ-11222, we can talk about the WZ-121 GFT. There are a couple of tanks like this, but God bless the game, we don't have these kind of tanks at every tier. Some tier are exception to this broken rule, but unfortunately it's only for the low tiers, because most of the time when you go up to tier 6 and more, you are gonna face broken tanks. And you need to be aware of these tanks when you're facing them in battle, because most of the time you are gonna get wrecked by them if you are not an experienced player. And also most of the time the broken tanks are played by good players, because usually good players that are not bored of the game, but I mean, when you wanna have fun, what do? You take your broken tanks to just kick some ass. So really be careful about this. So this is my first thing about these tanks, that you need to be careful, and also how to recognize them. Great gun, great mobility, and great armor. But some tanks are broken even knowing they are only good in one of these three characteristics. For example, the Smasher. The Smasher has an average mobility for a tier 7. It's quite the same as the one you have, for example, on the IS. It's not the greatest, it's not even for the armor the best. It doesn't really have armor, it doesn't really have a mobility, but the gun is one hell of a gun. It's the best gun at tier 7, and that's exactly what makes the Smasher broken. For example here, honestly the Smasher is the perfect example that you don't really need, that you need to balance every types of characteristic on the tank, that you can't just put some crazy gun or some crazy mobility or some crazy armor on a tank and expect it not to be broken. For example, Smasher, most of the time when you are playing the tank, you don't even need to aim. You have the biggest alpha damage at tier 7. If you shoot with HE, thanks to your great gun accuracy, which is guided by Stalin, you will probably put a lot of 900s on your opponents. I mean, this tank can one-shot pretty much everything at tier 6 with HE, and can nearly take half the HPs of a tier 7 with one single shot. That's what makes the Smasher broken. And maybe that's how Wargaming thought about the tank when they first tried to create it, because that's a Blitz Nation tank. Therefore, it means it's not an historical tank, it's just Wargaming saying, hey, I want this tank to be in the game. And maybe they said, okay, the tank doesn't have a good mobility, we don't want the tank to have a good mobility, we don't want the tank to have armor, but we want to sell the tank. What is the best way to do that? Just put it one fucking huge gun. And that's what happened. That's what gave us the Smasher, the most overpowered tank in the game, in my opinion. But is it really bad to have broken tanks in Blitz? I mean, most of the time, yes, okay, it's gonna maybe break a bit the game mechanism. It's gonna destroy your fun when you're facing them. But let's be honest, don't you love playing broken tanks? And you're lying if you say no to this question. And we can also add one last thing to this, the fact that even if a tank is extremely broken, it will be really broken and be exploited as it's meant to be, only by good players. Honestly, I have seen, I don't know how many Smasher players get their ass kicked, or players in Dracula. Honestly, these tanks everybody calls broken. I totally agree with you. I totally agree. For example, we took 3 tanks here. We have the Foch, the Smasher, and the Dracula. They are all overpowered in their own way. The Foch because it gathers all the main characteristics a perfect tank should have: gun, mobility, armor. The Smasher because the gun of the Smasher is the deadliest at tier 7, and the Dracula because it's combined the best mobility at tier 7 with one of the best gun depression at this tier as well, and a good reload, let's say, to sum up, a good gun. But take a look at the Dracula. It doesn't have any armor, and most of the people are saying it is broken. I disagree. I agree to say it's broken, but I disagree saying it's generally broken. What makes a broken tank broken is the player. If you give your Dracula to a 48% or 46 or 30 or whatever win rate player this tank, he will not, probably, maybe it's gonna happen, of course it's gonna happen, but it's gonna happen less than if you give it to a pro player. But it's not gonna make a real difference in the game. To me, an extremely broken tank, the god of the broken tanks, would be a tank that it doesn't matter that you give it to a pro player or a noob. If you have this tank in your team, you're 100% sure to win. And I don't think that's the case of the Dracula because of the armor. If you had the same armor as the one you have on the Badger combined with the mobility and the gun of the Dracula, yes, it would be completely broken. But that's not the case here. Why? Because the Dracula needs some skill. Even if some of you might not agree with this statement, that's what I think, that this tank needs skill. The Smasher needs skill as well. Less, but still, you still need skill. But where broken tanks became a problem, that's when Wargaming decided to change their politics by putting most of the premium tanks broken, or most of the broken tanks premiums. You can turn the phrase as you wish, but you get the idea. Most of the time, if you check, the broken tanks are the one you have to pay with real money. And okay, I understand the politic of Wargaming. They need to make money, so they need to put in the store tanks that are great to make people spend. I guess the logic, but god damn it, sometimes they put Smasher, Dracula, Helsing, Object 252U, WZ121 GFT. These tanks, it's too much. Most of the time it's too much. But in the other hand, we have to remember one thing: the older a tank is in the game, the less it is played. And I think that's what is counterbalancing the fact that most of the tanks that are broken are not spammed too long. My advice, I would say, in this kind of situation, for example, if tomorrow Wargaming released a tier 7 completely broken, just wait 1 month before playing again tier 7. Because at the beginning, everybody's gonna play the tank because it's new, etc. But after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, nobody gives a shit anymore and nobody plays it anymore. That's what I wanted to talk about this today. Tell me what you think in the comments. I would be surprised to see if some people agree or disagree with me and why it's important for me. And I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a bit different than what I'm used to do, but I thought it was an interesting video to share my point of view on broken tanks. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget you're not here to be better but to be the best, and see you in stream tonight.